And here we are on a Monday morning. See, I got that right, Pat. You know,
Right.
some people say the older you get, the stupider you get. That's not true. It is true to say that the older you get, the uglier you get. But it's not true to say the older you get, the stupider you get. Not necessarily. I know the day of the week, and this is Monday.
Yeah.
Yeah?
This is Monday.
Can you confirm that?
This is Monday.
Oh, terrific. Got a good start.
Terrific.
Anyway, is life good with you up there in Donegal?
Yeah. You know the nice thing about Monday, Jude? Monday used to be the day I hated most in the week. Now it's the day I like most in the week. Remember when you were young and you're going to work and Monday morning came along and you were getting up about 7 o'clock and you had 2 or 3 weeks to get out to school and whatever. Now I'm at that age when Monday morning, oh, it's Monday morning, I'll turn over and have another sleep.
You're a man who's very fond of his sleep. It's lucky for you. I wake up and
Absolutely.
that's me finished. I can't lie in the bed
Uh,
any longer. Anyway, that's enough of our intimate details about what we do in our bedrooms. Let's
yes.
talk about an item of the day. Let's start with Biden and Netanyahu. You're suggesting you've come across something that suggests there's a parting of the ways ahead between the two.
Yeah, over the weekend there's quite a considerable, like, well, quite considerable. The Americans will back Israel no matter what, but it's quite obvious that behind the scenes there's been a lot of tension. Uh, Biden has said that there's a red line of Israelis going to Rafah, and Netanyahu's basically told him to take a run to himself. That there's only a week or two left before they'll have Hamas totally destroyed, and they're not going to listen to the Americans. Biden actually said publicly that Netanyahu was doing a lot of disservice to the people of the Israeli state, and but Netanyahu's snapped back that he has got the support of the people of Israel to root out Hamas and to ensure it never happens again. And just for good measure, Judy threw in the line that they will not be forced under any circumstances to accept a two state solution. So basically, Israel is sort of biting the hand that feeds it. But the Americans won't have the balls, Judy, to say if that's the case, we will stop supplying you with arms or with
Exactly.
money
That's
or
the
anything else.
key. I couldn't agree more.
Uh,
That's the key. I mean, I was going to say, what's so different about Rafah? I mean, Biden has
yeah,
given the green light and supplied weaponry right hand over fist all along.
yeah.
So why should he
Uh,
draw back at Rafah? He might as well be consistent. Um, and this notion that he's has he really come to the parting of the ways? I mean, if
no, he hasn't
Netanyahu
got
goes
it.
on
No,
in, he's not going to stop the pipeline of supplies
no,
going to
no,
him.
and as well as that, Jude, I think the American hypocrisy and cynicism is off the charts. Basically, Jude, they're going to keep on they keep on supplying the bombs and the
Hmm.
shells for the artillery and whatever. And there was even talk of some American troops on the ground in Israel helping things out. I don't know how true that is, but anyway, they're now talking about building a pontoon and sending in supplies to help the starving Gazans.
Yeah.
But Jude, by all accounts, to build the pontoon that they're talking about would take 2 months. So
Hmm.
that's ridiculous. They're dropping stuff from the skies. Apparently, a
Killed
couple
a
of
couple of
parachutes
people.
didn't open, and they actually killed 5 people
Mm,
at the weekend,
mm,
and so on. But anyway, leaving all that aside, apparently I'm not being facetious here, but it's a drop in the ocean for what is needed.
mm.
What they can deliver by air is pathetic. They need 2 or 3 massive big ships unloading, getting out supplies, and so on. Jude, and I don't know if you're not a big social media person, but I am. And if you look through X, no, formerly known as Twitter or Facebook, and see the photographs, either someone's doing a brilliant job of doctoring photographs, but there are images coming out now of children who are totally emaciated, like Biafra years ago. Dude, it's a fact. It's not, and so on. There's a thing on last night on BBC. I think BBC, in fairness, is finally sort of stopping, this sort of, yes, no type thing.
Mm,
That's
mm,
balancing act.
mm.
They last night said like these children are dying, and there was no sort of trying to balance it up with any other sort of stuff. So, but in it, Judah, I think it's all too. I think the cynicism and the hypocrisy of the West I think it's been a death knell for faith in
Yeah,
democratic politics because
absolutely.
anything now that the UK or EU or the Americans
Mm,
do now for Gaza, they've allowed, and we all know it, they've allowed Israel to do what the hell it wants. And now
yeah,
they're sort of trying to reclaim
yeah,
some sort of mirage of being
yeah.
good guys, ridiculous.
But you know what, the thing that makes me most sort of chilled is the fact that Biden is doing this now. Biden, every action will be focused on getting re-elected in November. So it
Yeah.
must be that the stand he has taken so far, that is to say, backing Israel to the hilt, even in the face of
Mm.
all that terrible suffering for months now, that must
Mm.
be something he believes most of the American people think is a good idea. I
Yeah.
know you
But you see
talked
that
about there was
that
demonstrations of Palestinian, in support of
yeah.
Palestine in America, and so there is. But I mean, that's in the end, that's what Biden must believe. Otherwise, he
Yeah.
wouldn't do it.
Yeah. I think there's a balancing act, Jude. I think the tide's starting to turn in America. When he was going to the State of the Union address the other night, there was a massive pro-Palestinian,
Yeah.
and some of the swing states, a lot of the black voters are now turning away from the Democrats because
Mhm.
of what's happening in Palestine. Of course, they're much more. You said the last day about the economy roaring ahead, but there's also a lot of poverty in some of the places in
Oh
America.
yeah. Oh
The
yeah.
cost of living in America has risen quite considerably, so
Uh-huh.
there's a lot of domestic issues. But
Uh-huh.
I think, as well as that, Jude, America is very, very isolated on the world stage. When at the UN Security Council, what is the 11 hands don't go up, and the an American goes up to block, to veto,
Yeah, but
ceasefire and stuff like that.
yeah, but you have the UK is still backing this policy of supplying Israel, and as far as
Yeah,
I know, France is quite friendly towards that as well. Now, I'm not saying that they
yeah.
don't have a different attitude at the UN, but by and large, as I understand it, the UK and say France are in favour, and well, the EU generally is in favour of
Yeah, well,
supporting
apparently, Jude,
Israel.
I'm only going on what I read. 70% of the Americans are in favor of ceasefire. Now,
Hmm.
hey, let's get this clear. And you can get accusations right, left, and center of anti-Semitism, but APAC seems to have got every American politician by the short and
Hmm.
curlies, because I have yet to hear, other than Bernie Sanders, who is Jewish, by the way.
Yeah.
Uh, and none of the big beasts of American politics seem willing to
Yeah.
criticize Israel. None of them.
Okay. Okay. Move on to another topic, Pat. Was you were watching TV last night, were you? Did you stay up for the Oscars?
No, I didn't know. No, just this morning, my wife came in to tell me at about 7:30. Oh, Cillian Murphy has won the Oscar. As I think he's the first native-born Irish
That's right.
person to won the
Yeah.
you know, and what the film Oppenheimer won the best film as well. So it
Uh-huh.
was quite an achievement for him, and he does mention the fact that he's done. And now I think he did it at the BAFTAs, and he's did it again. He's making clear everybody knows he's Irish, because the first thing he says, "I am one very proud Irishman here." So fair play to him.
Yeah, I like the guy. I think he's a superb actor. As I said before, his performance in What the Wind That Shakes the Barley was sufficient to convince me that he was superb.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
there's something very modest about him. You know,
yeah.
there's none of the gushing prima donna stuff from him. You know, he'll say a
No,
few words. And the other thing I like about him is he uses the odd Irish phrase. He finished his speech last night, as far as I know, by saying "Goramayagat."
uh,
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 and if that's true, and I'm sure it is because it's reported, I think that's a really nice idea. I think if Irish, the way we put up on our emails to each other in you,
uh,
and we talk about,
uh,
the
the
Clara
Clar,
of the
and we
day
talk
and
about
so on.
America. Yes,
Do
yes,
you do you approve of that kind of thing? Sort of littering English with the occasional Irish word or phrase.
absolutely. Because it makes it mainstream. Again, it's just every time when he was down in the office, when he was be getting up, he'd go Sinead. That's it.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah, yeah,
he
yeah.
laughed. Martin was no linguist, but he like, but it was like when they say right, Pat, Sinead, and he'd go.
But you see, the thing about it is when you get guys like McGuinness doing that,
Yeah,
there's a certain class of Irish person who say, "Oh, for God's sake, look, they've about two words they can speak.
yeah.
Aren't they ridiculous?" I detest that approach. I really detest that
Uh,
because they say,
yeah,
"Oh, if you're not
wasn't there
fluent like me,
somebody?
you should shut your mouth." You know?
Aye, some one of the people around about one of the Irish Times type saying about was it Ruth Dudley Edwards about Jerry Adams is Irish and so on,
Ah,
than giving him credit for learning a very difficult language and
yeah.
based in West Belfast. and he's fluent. He mightn't, his accent mightn't be the greatest, and his vocabulary, I don't know. But to me, he can converse in Irish, and he seems reasonably. So why not
Yeah.
give him the credit? By the way, it reminded me, Liam Clark, who used to be the Northern editor of the Sunday Times, he got an article one time, and Martin McGuinness used to write poetry,
Yeah.
like writing poetry. And McGuinness, they got this professor, I think from Oxford or somewhere, and this professor said he looked at two or three of Martin's poems, and he said one was doggerel basically, and he says one was quite good. But Liam's article started, university professor describes McGuinness' poems as doggerel. He didn't say that he described one as very good,
Yeah.
So you can
Yeah.
come at anything whatever way you want.
Yeah, I think it's sad when people reach for weapons that have nothing to do with the politics of the situation. What those people were intent on doing was bashing McGuinness or bashing Adams, nothing to
Yeah,
do with the Irish language. And certainly, I'd be totally in favour of as many people using as many as the wee bits that even if it's only 3 words. I think that's a good thing
yeah.
to do. I mean, do we? I don't think the Irish people appreciate what a fantastic thing they have. And what a terrible
Mm,
thing it would be if we lost it. You know,
yeah.
it's not that
But
it's
look at
useful.
it like this. We've got Irish is one of the oldest language. I got into a bit of he was some sort of right wing Tory guy, and I was on, and he sneered about Irish, and I said,
Yeah.
well, unlike you, we've got one of the most ancient languages in the world. We've got unique sports like hurling and Gaelic football. We've got our culture. We've got Irish dance was is unique. We have what was in 1950 America they did a survey. I think it was at Yale University, and the top um, poet was W.B. Yeats. The top
Mm.
writer, short story writer, was what do you call him? The guy down from Frank
Frank
O'Connor,
O'Connor.
and Frank O'Connor, and the top novelist was James Joyce. So the three top people in the world in 19 after the first part of the century of 1990 were all Irish. And I was
Yeah.
saying, you people talk about we have a culture and it's a unique culture in many ways,
Mm.
and we should be very proud to hold on to it.
Well, there was people who would put it a bit more crudely than that. They would say Ireland was a highly civilized nation at a time when they were still painting their backsides purple over in Britain. Anyway, that's very
Anyway,
rude. Okay, let's move on to something else. Here's a really good trick, and you're all credit to you for having spotted it. And that is how to libel somebody and not have to pay. Now, that's a
uh,
good trick. I find that's really something. It's this Michelle. I first of all assumed you sent me this. I assumed it was Michelle Donnell, and that must be somebody from the South, but it's not. It's in British politics, isn't it?
yeah, Michelle Donnan is a Tory. I think she's in the science department.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think about sometime about October. She no this no this Suella Braverman,
Yeah.
all this right wing crap. Nadine Dorris. I think they're all trying to reform the reform people. That and so on. They're now spouting all this right wing rubbish. Anyway, Michelle Donnan is a minister at the science department, and she accused two professors whose name I think one of them was Kate Sang. I think it was the name
Hmm.
of one of them. Anyway, she said they were extremists and they were, in fact, they were Hamas supporters. Uh, because, Jude, like me and you, they were on the side of the Palestinians. They were on the side of the oppressed, not the oppressor. And I want to make that very clear. So, anyway, Donnan issued on I think it was Twitter, and issued a statement or whatever it was, accusing the both women of being extremists and of supporting Hamas. Professor Sang issued libel proceedings right away, and she said Donnan was just out to make a cheap political point at her expense.
Hmm.
And within days, literally, I presume that her Donnan's lawyer says, "Look, you haven't a leg to stand on here. You've got this totally wrong, etc., etc., etc." And anyway, they had to settle, and she issued an apology, and she issued damages. But she's not paying the damages. Her department is paying the damages. The taxpayer, in other words, is paying the damage.
Is
Now,
that a
Jude, here's
rule?
the thing that
Is
let's
that
get down to the
legal?
nub. If tomorrow morning, me and you said no, accuse somebody of being a paedophile on this the
Yeah.
podcast. If you said it, you'd end up paying label damages. And so if I said the same, I'd pay. So
And
why does a
I
minister?
probably
Why
have to
is
pay
she
as
giving a
well
free?
for allowing you on to say
Huh?
it.
Aye, exactly. I mean, exactly. But the point is, why should a minister be allowed a cheap shot that you
It's,
probably knew wasn't true, yet somebody else is picking up the tab for it? And
yeah,
see,
I
I think
think
there's something very wrong in that.
I
There's,
can't.
It's
I can
scandalous.
I can scarcely believe it. I mean, is this the case with all ministers, I wonder, in Britain?
Dude, I
That
really
if they say
genuinely don't
something
know.
like this, it's libelous or untrue, that they can be protected in terms of finance by their departments. God
Yeah, well,
almighty. I mean,
it seems to the one an official from the department, as far as I recall, said that they settled quickly in order to cut out the cost of a trial and a long leave. In other words, they knew she was up shit creek without a paddle because she shouldn't have said it.
yeah,
But the point is, Jude, I don't know. Does that give? You see, there used to be the um, Parliament was covered, in the sense that you could say what you want in
yeah.
Parliament, and what's the term? I can't go off the
Privilege,
top of my
House of
head.
Commons.
Privilege, aye, privilege, privilege. But you see, ministers are not covered. Once you go step out onto the steps of Parliament and said out in the public, they're no longer covered. But
Yeah,
this
yeah.
seems to be given a bit of a carte blanche. Say whatever you want, and you're still covered.
Well, really, I think somebody should investigate that rather further, because I have a
Yeah,
funny feeling that she's getting away with a fast one here. Because otherwise, if all ministers, all politicians of a ruling party were to have a carte blanche to say what they wanted to, and if they were pulled up on it, that the department they belong to would fork up,
yeah.
that'd be nuts. Anyway,
And
the British, I was going to say the British, but the British politicians are all a wee bit nuts. Let's consider, Pat, something I think is very important, and everybody's talking about it on RTE radio anyway, and that is these two referendum defeats that were suffered in the South. First of all, I'm going to ask you a question. Now, don't blame me for doing this. Did you vote?
no,
No. And I'll tell you something. If I'd been in your shoes, I wouldn't have voted either. And now, tell me,
no,
what's your reason for not voting?
Jude, I didn't understand it. I really genuinely
Exactly,
didn't.
exactly. That's the point. That's exactly the point that I had too. I listened
Yeah.
and listened and listened and listened, read about it, and I still had only the woolliest notion of what they were on about.
Uh, Yeah, I didn't suddenly become Dr. McQuaid or whatever it is. The church.
Yeah,
A lot of the right wing guys, the old conservatives say they're saying it's a victory. No, it's not. I'm not. I just didn't understand, and I wasn't going to vote for someone I didn't understand. And by the way, Peter Tobin was on Thursday
yeah.
on RT, and he absolutely destroyed Rodrigo Gorman, the minister who was promoting it.
Mm.
Gorman didn't seem to know whether it was Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday. He was all over the place, all over the show. And Father Tobin, actually, in fairness to him, said, "Look, Minister, you can't even define what's going on here."
Uh-huh.
And just see when it's so loose and so woolly and so everything. Dude, the whole thing. Remember, you've said it a million times, as have I. See, when it comes to Brexit and stuff like that, we should have, if we're going to do something, there should be clarity. It should be defined. It should be easily understood.
Yep.
And see, these are referendums. I don't think anybody understood what they were. One of the things was that they would strive to ensure families were looked after. Not that they would. Not that
Yeah.
what does strive mean?
Yeah.
Should they
Yeah.
go and define legally strive?
And then there's
Ridiculous.
durable relationships, like durable.
What is who decides? Apparently, if you get Christmas cards together, that's a durable relationship. Jesus Christ, dude. Going to court and say, hey, by the way, me and my missus, we haven't been together long, but we got one Christmas card there.
But
You know,
even in terms of if they were living together, a man and wife, that what I mean, is 5 years durable, or do you have to go to 10 or 15 or 20? How long do you have to do it?
but
It's
the other thing,
it's
what do you call him? Potter Tobin sort of raised the point too. He says, right, say Jude and Maureen Collins are together for 50 years, and maybe Jude decides to bugger off. He's met an 18-year-old, and and
oh, I
uh,
should be so
uh,
lucky.
he should be and sets up a relationship with the 18-year-old.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, what? Who's got? If anything happens, Jude, who as the children from the first marriage got the rights, or the children from the second marriage? Who's the family? Who's the durable relationship, and all the rest? Ill-defined, And so, Jude, I think, like most people, if in doubt, don't.
Yeah, it's astonishing though that Fine Gael, I think they were the ones who essentially carved it out as for referendums. I wonder what the hell are they thinking of? Like Leo Varadkar isn't a fool, whatever else he might be. Why
Yeah,
is it that he has allowed this to happen when he knows it's going to
yeah.
be damaging? And Micheál Martin
Uh,
too, I suppose. Why would they allow it to go forward as it stood
You
and
know, I
be
really
so
can't
big?
answer that question.
It really,
Neither me. My wife says to me on Friday after me and you finished, and she says, "By the way, you're going to vote?" And I says, "I know." I says, "Do you?" She says, "No, I don't." She says, "I don't know." She says, "I don't know." I'm like, "Well," I said, "I would like to think I'm neither stupid nor like I'm not Einstein either." But
yeah.
I'd reached the stage. Every time I heard a discussion when it was finished, I was more confused than when it
Uh,
started.
I think there's two things. One is you have to believe that, well, I have to know what it is that you're voting for. And the second thing is, you have to kind of believe that this is important. I'll be honest, most people, I think somebody said this, most people are concerned about having their meals on the table, having their health looked after, a whole range of things. And if you want to have a referendum, or you're going to have a citizens' assembly or whatever to look at a problem, I'd suggest they start with the border poll thing
Yeah.
rather than that, or something like it, like the health system, for example, or education system. But what words written in the Constitution? Now,
Well,
they
Jude, you
do
know,
matter,
Citizens'
but they're
Assembly.
well down the list. Well down the list.
No, the Citizens Assembly, Jude, have usually got their finger on the pulse, and they're almost detail driven, if you know what I mean. You know,
Yeah.
the sense that they drill right down into it and discuss it and so on. Now, the Citizens Assembly have got things right, like the abortion thing about the gay rights and so on, and whatever else they discuss. The government, I don't think, followed the advice of the citizens. I think the government came up with their own wording rather than they didn't follow the strategy, Jude, and they said, "No, the old one, make it clear what it's about." They didn't
Oh
follow that,
yeah.
and
Oh yeah. I mean,
the messaging was unbelievably bad. But Jude,
uh-huh.
if you're going to ask the citizens in assembly to come up with something, and they come up with something, I think you'd be well advised. Right, that's what the people want. Let's go and give it to them as near as we can possibly do it legally.
Uh-huh. Okay, let's move to another item, Pat. You pick it. You pick the next item.
Hey, Jude, Kenova. Remember
Okay.
Kenova? Our Kenova. The Irish Times. You know our famous newspaper. I think
Yes,
Irish
indeed.
Times is. At one stage, it was a bastion of liberal thought in the 70s and 80s. I think it's reverted back to the 1930s. It's become like the Sunday Independent. But anyway,
Yeah.
Jude, the Irish Times editorial says um, took a position on Kenova in which they basically said that the British Army had gone too far, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that basically the whole thing of running double agents was acceptable, but it had to be done within the rule of law and within human rights legislation and all the
Mm-hmm.
rest of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think to myself, how very Irish Times of you. Well, they should have come out right away and said, "What happened was a disgrace." And there were people getting murdered, like Freddie Scappaticci. Wait, here's a big question. I meant to ask it to you, Freddie. Morally, who was running Freddie Scappaticci? Like, who was it? Was the IRA was really running him, or was it his handlers and British security force?
Oh, it was the British
Were they
Army was
telling were
running.
they telling him who to bring in and not, or was it the IRA? Doesn't it?
Well,
Because he was in charge of the nutting squad by all
well,
accounts.
he would be
So.
making the decisions then if he was in charge of
Uh,
the nutting squad. And who would be telling him what decisions to make? I would have thought the British Army.
So that's a real Pandora's box because, but by the way, that's a Pandora's box that will never be opened because the British will ensure that. But if they were picking people off the streets, like who was whispering in his ear, "Oh, hey, bring your man in because he's very active in the IRA and
Yeah,
something,"
that's right.
and smear him as.
I think that's very
Uh,
important, Pat, what you've touched on there, because I
uh,
did read a report that said that many of the victims of state knife were
uh,
from Republican, and in cases, very high profile Republican families.
uh,
And those were people that were taken out and shot on the word of Scappaticci and ultimately the British government. I mean, it is absolutely outrageous that it was allowed to happen. Um, I never believed for a moment, to be honest with you, that that wasn't the case. I always believed that the British government, where it could, would get informers in. And we saw that in the Supergrass trials, Pat.
yeah,
If they
yeah,
could get some guy, they would present him. And the thing that got to my nerves was they would present what they called the informants. I mean, they
uh,
really were informers. They would
uh.
present them as being high-minded citizens who'd seen the sinful past that they'd led
Last
and who
year,
now
yeah,
had seen the
Raymond.
light.
They did that with a couple of Raymond Gilmer and Bobby. And what
Yeah,
do you call it? Willie Carlin, who'd seen the
yeah,
error of his ways.
yeah,
Bollocks.
yeah. And presenting these as sort of champions of the people and how brave they were and so on.
Yeah,
It really was sort of disgusting. The fact of the matter is that what happened was I was talking to some Republicans and they suggested to me that what it was is that a Republican or an IRA guy would be caught with some personal detail at an early
yeah,
stage, like maybe he had taken money and used it when he shouldn't have done it, or maybe he was having an affair and his family didn't or his wife didn't know about it. Something that would be really quite explosive in his private life. And they
yeah,
say, well, we'll not mention that. You just give us this wee bit of information. And then they would keep on getting the guy into deeper and deeper and deeper trouble by asking more and more and more and more
yeah,
until eventually, he was a key informer for them. And
yeah.
that to me was extremely, well, I suppose you have to accept that the spies were part of the whole deal, but it does seem to me terribly cynical, especially when they knew that in order to cover up their informer, they had to allow some people to die. But
No,
then
but
you
dude,
see, they would have taken
there
the
was no,
attitude. They would have taken the attitude. A dead, the only good IRA man's a dead IRA man.
yeah, exactly. But there was no regulations. There was no legal what sanction for these guys. Basically the British Army, the security service, were allowed to act as God. And it'll be covered up forevermore, amen. And by the way, I think the Irish Times wrote it down was British Army crossed the line on was not only withholding information but suppressing information. They did a lot more than withholding. They were
Uh,
active participants in the war, and it was a
and the
dirty war.
deaths,
And
the
they were up to
deaths.
their eyeballs in murder. And Jude, we all knew. I remember being told by numerous Republicans, And by the way, Jude, I keep going back to this, but I remember, getting into arguments with people and saying, "Look, the British Army and the RUC are up to their eyeballs in collusion and in
Hmm.
dirty war." Oh, that's IRA propaganda.
That's
You've
right. That's
fallen
right.
for
I
it. Like
remember that.
Jesus Christ. Jude, I used to see it because like people come and say, like somebody's been arrested, and then when somebody else went to complain, they were arrested too. It was all part of the game, and now it's
Hmm.
all coming out. Oh, yeah, we accept it's the truth.
Yeah.
Jude, it
Well,
was part of the game.
oh yeah. Well, what do you think of the thing, Pat, where they're asking for apologies? The Kenova reporter said that the British government should apologise and the IRA should apologise. What's your thoughts on that? And I'll tell you afterwards how right you are or how wrong
Jude,
you are.
I know someone. I think the apologies from the British would be absolutely meaningless, superficial, a waste of bloody time. And I like and asking Michelle O'Neill, who wasn't even born in 19. Was she born in 1980? By the way, I'm not even
Um,
sure.
what year did you say there?
1980. I'm not even
1980. Well,
sure. But I mean,
she's 47 or something now, I think.
well,
So
she'd been born roughly. But
just
anyway,
about
bottom line
born,
is
maybe.
she was not active, and so what's she going to give an apology for? You know, no,
I
Jude,
think
I
that's,
think
yeah, go
it's
ahead, Pat.
I think that's just that's a wee bit of throwing out the bait out there, and just to make it look good.
They're using it as a political weapon. They want to damage Sinn Féin. You had
Aye,
Emma Little Pengelly yesterday calling on,
aye,
maybe the day before, calling
Republicans.
on Michelle O'Neill to apologise and to say that the whole campaign was wrong.
Aye, Michael
And
Martins
the
was
same
at that
thing
as
from
well.
Michael
Yeah,
Martin,
yeah,
exactly the same thing
yeah.
from him. I
That's
find
never
that
going to
very
happen.
distasteful, really. What they're
Aye,
talking
aye,
about here is people who are murdered, and they're
aye,
grabbing the opportunity to stand on the coffins and shout.
yeah. So today, the British Army and apologise for their whole behaviour in Northern Ireland. The day the Unionists behaved for 50 years of misrule and said that we were, and so on, I'll
Yeah,
say to the IRA, you apologise then.
yeah,
By the
yeah,
way, I quick just before we've been doing this, but I can't let this go, and we've only got what 3 minutes.
yeah.
The British Tory Party to head off. They reckon an absolute whitewash at the next election. They want to bring Boris back. There was a lady, Judith McAlpine, says we have to bring Boris back, not to win the next election, but to stave off a catastrophe.
But to
And they
lose it
reckon
better, to lose it better, Pat.
Huh?
To lose it better.
Yeah, exactly. To lose it better, yeah. So anyway, here, Dr. Collins here. The Labour Party are on 46 at the weekend, up one. Conservatives are 18 minus two, and the Reform are 13 up one. In other words, Nigel Farage is biting at the heels of the Tory party by only 5% behind them. So, Jude, they're now saying if they bring back Boris, not to lead, but to lose better, and that what do you call it, they could hold on to maybe 80 more seats. What is your opinion, Dr. Collins, of this latest?
I think, actually, for once, I think they're right. I think Boris, despite what you would think of him, and I don't think much of him, he is a vote getter. He's a Tory through and through. He's a liar. He's a womanizer. He's all the things they say about him. But he does it all with a smile on his face and a quip in Latin. And by and large, people like that kind of politician. He's fresher than the average glum-faced idiot. So I'd say if he comes back, he will save some seats. But I don't believe he'll come back. That's the nature of Boris. He would not agree to be second string, except he thought that would involve him on a path that ultimately, maybe after the election, where he would be the leader of the Conservatives. Do you think?
Obviously, Lady McAlpine or Judith McAlpine doesn't do irony here. The Tory party is rotten to the core. We need new Conservative values. And that's why you bring back Boris. Boris, like what values does
Maybe she meant different Conservative values.
It's almost a mirror image of Trump. He's a liar. He's a cheat. He's a narcissist. He's a sexual predator. He's our type of guy now.
And you see,
what is with these right giving?
It's because, Pat, it's because they both get votes. That's what it is. Yeah. Trump is leading the Republican Party because he gets votes. If Boris came back, he would be, I think, welcomed in many areas because he gets votes. Okay, any jokes, Pat, to go?
No, I was never very good at telling jokes.
I know jokes. Could you do a funny walk maybe across the floor there? No? Okay, so enjoy the rest of the week, Pat. We'll talk to you again.
Enjoy the